everybody I've spoken to so far said housing is a big concern, affordable housing. And with Amazon coming in, are you afraid, like, hey, maybe I can't afford where I live now because
people can't afford where they live now? So I'm not, like I said, I'm not necessarily worried about Amazon. I'm worried about the city and what their plans are if Amazon comes. And if they don't, what are their plans?
And then, is there some shroud of secrecy that you guys don't feel the city residents are being told about this stuff? Is that a concern?
I mean, it's not a shroud. You don't really know what's in the plan?
No. I've seen the video, that's it.
There's no shroud. I mean, there's no shroud.
Anything else on that? Thank you. Do you live down in Hazelwood?
Yes.
What do you think about that new project going on across the railroad tracks?
Almano?
The old steel mill.
The Almano site. Yeah.
You seen the place for that?
Yes, I've seen some plans. I think that the neighborhood is used to like big industry being down there, so it won't be much of a change. But I hope that the entities that are down there consider themselves a part of the neighborhood.
You know, that railroad track seems like it's
Yes. I mean, fingers crossed. So far, it's been a process where we've been able to express what we need and what we think a partnership between the residential side and the commercial side would look like. So all we can do is express what we need, how we feel, how we would like to work together, and then stay true to that.
almost like it's that
They will come. They're already here. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Thank you.
No, on the inside. You are. So you should be right now, like 10 minutes.
It's hard to,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Jourdan Hicks for Instagram because he likes pictures.
I'm a Luddite. I have a dumb phone. It's a good phone. I like it because look at this thing.
If you drop it, it's the word.
I like that. That's right. I actually, every time I go back to the Horizon Star, probably add property. I don't even have it. I'm probably 3 tweaks.
No, keep me.
You can upgrade to smart numbers.
Oh my gosh, I bet you they ask for that.
They do. Although actually, I'm a hypocrite. I use this as an internet device, so I use it just to when I can get my iPhone to look on it. It's stupid because I have a GPS in my car. Hello. I have an iPod, and I have this thing for the internet. So I have like all the components that would go into a smartphone without actually having a functional smartphone. I prefer to keep it separate still. Somehow better. Right, exactly. Tools versus obsessions. How long have you been involved in the Hazelwood initiative? I'd be interested in sitting down with you folks. I'm going to speak a little bit out of turn. With the autonomous vehicle shuttle that's going through the run and supposed to connect Hazelwood to Oakland, that we think it's a really transparent, like, the conversation is not a conversation. Clearly, the city is invested in figuring out how to get future Hazelwood residents to Oakland, and they're not actually caring or interested in. Yeah. Do you think that would you say that that's fair? Because from all of the meetings that I've been to, the residents have been locally opposed to it, and they wanted to see the sewer and water infrastructure.
I think that's, for me, the case with anything in the city that they always want to hear about. How would this benefit the people who want to live right about when we want to suck it out and deal with plus and things like fair going on. Oh, man. I'll sit here.
I'm Cora. Nice to meet you. You're involved with PublicSource. Oh, with the PublicSource. Okay, cool. Great. Oh boy. You're on time. That's great. Good job, Carl. Is this from the cauldron?
No, it's not. Can I see your autograph?
Oh, yeah. That's
I
right.
love your hand.
No. What can I say?
Can we check that?
Yeah, we should plan to meet. If we can.
Yeah, I was just saying, just.
Yeah, we can
just
meet
for me.
afterwards, but we should also plan to meet.
No, I agree. Before one of us.
Sure. I appreciate all of the work that you guys have been putting out recently. I mean, you've always been great, but I think it's the quality of communication is really outstanding. Yeah.
I just appropriated everything. There's police forms due when signing just because we're electing.
It's about two approaches to government. It's actually market through. I can.
Would you?
So I'm supposed to start with that.
Yeah, that's okay. I think that gives a really good context for the discussion. So, man, I have to go and check. Oh, great. That's all right. And then Amanda, Jourdan will be after Lee. And then Laura after Jourdan. And then Mila after
Excellent.
That's pretty good.
Perfect planning.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And so you all know, I'm going to start off, or Jackie's going to introduce the panel, and I'm going to start off with just a few words, giving kind of some of the details about what's going on in Seattle, just some numbers about housing and race and gender in the workforce. Then I'll open it up, or then we'll go into it. But I think that context for those details are good.
To the live tweet, should I use that public source?
It's Matt.
And I will continue to know it.
Who do you want to see next?
This should be shared up here as well.
It's still relatively cooler. Faster than south. So maybe one of the things that will overtake it is north end. Right now, we're still in that. Still in south.
What's that?
That almost flew around.
Oh yeah. No, they were actually thinking that they might even overflow. It's an I mean, it's like there's such a lack of critical conversation around this. So I'm glad that there's some interest.
I can't tell you how many people are raving to us about creating compliments. Your lunchtime talk was wildly inspiring. And Janera did one, the last one. Good to see you. I'm so glad you're talking. Anyway, Janera came and did our last one on Repair the World. And she talked about East Liberty, and we just feel like people are learning things they never would know. You started that trend.
No, I'm part of that trend.
How are you? Good. I will leave you now since you're safe for the future. It's all good? Amanda. Oh, thank you so much.
We can get
Does anyone have not decided on these board circulating. Make sure you get them back to us. Thank you.
This mic.
This is Joe.
Good. Morning, folks. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Appreciate your taking time on a Saturday afternoon to do the important work that we all need to be doing, much more than we have been. But we hope we're starting a process of engaging more residents in thinking and acting to build the city that we want and the city that we deserve. My name's Jackie Smith. I teach sociology at Pitt, but my main hat that I'm most committed to is my work with the Human Rights City Alliance, which is an organization working to bring groups and people together around the city to build a city that's organized to advance the human rights of everybody in our city. And in that framework, I'm working with folks at the university to convene conversations with leaders in our community who are working on human rights struggles, and to bring them together with people, the faculty, staff, and students, to see how we can come together and be more effective at promoting human rights and changing some of the discourse in our city so that it's not just about jobs and growth, but we're really prioritizing conversations about how the direction our city is going to affect the rights of the people who live here. And in particular, we're concerned about racial and economic and gender justice. And so we're really happy to convene this panel, a long overdue conversation in our city about how the proposed siting of Amazon's second headquarters here in Pittsburgh would impact our city, and to get our views about what kind of city we want and what kind of proposals should be going to any corporation, including Amazon, that wants to work in our city. The co-sponsors of this project then are the Human Rights City Alliance, the Pitt Human Rights Initiative, and we're working with Urbankind Institute, which is part of the Pitt Human Rights Initiative. And so this reflects the kind of project that our group is working to do more of in the coming months and years, and get our universities more engaged in being socially responsible citizens in our city. Our panel, this is the second of two panels. We had a panel on Wednesday at Pitt where we kind of focused on the university as a player in this game of economic development, and reflected on some of the ways that our universities in our city have contributed to inequitable kinds of development, and thinking about what we could do as workers at the universities, as students and community members to make our universities more positive players in the work of making a city that's oriented around human rights. I'll just lift up a few points that were raised at that forum on Wednesday, because this should continue that conversation. And then I'll turn it over to my co-organizer, Jason Beery, from the Urbankind Institute. Some of the lessons that came out of Wednesday's panel at Pitt are that, first of all, economic development in Pittsburgh and in other cities tends to be organized, or tends to be led by business leaders who meet regularly with government officials. There's power brokers that meet in the back rooms, and they make agreements outside of the public view, and then they present those proposals to us as pretty much done deals. We want that to change, and this panel is really helping us think about how we bring community voices into that process of planning economic development and break up those power brokerage networks. Businesses are organized to create cities that work for them. We need to be organized so that we can make sure that city policies benefit us. The second point that came up and that will be raised again today is that if Amazon came here, it would very likely increase the kinds of inequalities that we're all working to try to address and change, especially regarding housing and racial and economic inequalities. The third point from that panel I mentioned is that universities need to be more socially responsible citizens in our city, And that's only going to happen if the people who work at those institutions and who attend those institutions as students really push them to change their business as usual practices. And I'm committed, and so is the Pitt Human Rights Working Group. We're committed to really trying to change the discourses in our universities. And the fourth point that I want to lift up, and hopefully we can revisit here, is the kind of assumption, the common sense language that to get jobs in our city, we need to appeal to outside investors. We think that we could look more inside our community and see what resources we have that can contribute to growth of jobs and the kind of growth that would really benefit the residents who live in our city now and who, by conventional development practices, are being pushed out of our city. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jason Beery, and thank you again for coming out this morning, and we look forward to a lively discussion.
Right, so good morning, everybody. Thank you again for coming out, and especially thank you to all of you who came on Wednesday as well and who are here again today. So thank you, as Jackie, for the introduction. I am Jason Beery. I am the Senior Research and Policy Analyst at Urbankind Institute. For those of you who don't know Urbankind Institute, we are a small consulting company. We consider ourselves to be a think and do tank. We combine research and policy work with community engagement work. And we're involved in projects all across the city. We're involved in the Hazelwood and Homewood community planning processes right now, and we are involved in other smaller projects as well. So I'm going to just review some of the things that have gone on in Seattle, because it's something that we haven't really talked about here. So back in October, the city put together a team of individuals to work on their proposal for Amazon HQ2. That team that was put together was really kept separate from the voice of the community. There were representatives, nominal representatives from the community who took part in some of the discussions, but by and large, the discussions there were kept secret and out of the public eye. And amidst all of the hype around putting the proposal together, I decided to write a paper about Amazon HQ2 and what's happened in Seattle and what it might mean for here. And many of you have already read that paper, and we appreciate that. But the main idea with these panels that we've held this week is that we wanted to have a community voice. We wanted to have an opportunity for the community to come out and talk about, or representatives from the community to come out and talk about what this might mean, what Amazon HQ2 might mean for things that we are already concerned about in this city, relating to affordability, gentrification, displacement, transportation, government transparency, and workforce development. Right? We're concerned about these things already, and this Amazon HQ2 proposal would just add another burden to the city. So we don't know exactly what's in the proposal now, but if we look to Seattle, we can get an idea of what's happened there and kind of infer what might happen here. And again, we don't know about this for certain, and I think Mila's going to touch on why we don't know about that when she speaks. But we can see a few things. Just to refresh your memories, this Amazon is proposing to open a new second headquarters that promises to bring 50,000 jobs with an average salary of $100,000. Right, so an average salary of $100,000. These are mainly headquarters jobs. These aren't the distribution center jobs. These are the main office jobs that you see in Seattle. And so over the last several years, Seattle has rapidly transformed. In 2010, Amazon's global workforce was 35,000 individuals. In 2017, it was 380,000. In Seattle alone, in 2010, Amazon had 5,000 employees. By 2017, it had 40,000. In that time, since 2010, Seattle gained 100,000 residents. The metro area gained 360,000 residents. Right? So this is rapid population growth over a short period of time. Now with that, right, we need to think about who these new people are who are moving to Seattle. Right? The office jobs that are being advertised for HQ2 kind of fit the mold of what we see with larger tech companies as well. So they are mostly young, mostly male, mostly white tech workers. Right? And so with this influx of wealthy young people, we see an increase in housing costs, an increase in homelessness, an increase in income inequality, an increase in the race and gender pay gaps. And we see also that transit projects have not kept up with this influx of people. So specifically, with that, in terms of housing, in June 2017, the median house price in Seattle was $729,000. It's the median house price, which is a 13.7% increase over the previous year. And that's not just affecting one particular area of Seattle, it's affecting the whole area, the whole region. A Seattle Times headline from last summer read, "No escape for priced out Seattleites. Home prices set record for hours drive in each direction." Right? So this is a massive increase in housing costs. In terms of rents, in March 2017, rents were up 8.3% over March 2016 and up 57% over 2011. So that's an increase of about $635 per month. And those increases come in spite of about 9,000 new rental units that were available in 2017 and 60,000 new units planned by 2020. So with this influx of people and with this increase in housing costs, we see this rapid transformation of the city. We see a very strong spatial transformation of the city with different people moving into different neighborhoods. We see a lot of actually increase in diversity because we have a lot of young white individuals moving into areas that had been predominantly Black, African American, Asian American, Hispanic, and Latino. And we see a lot of those individuals moving out into the whiter suburbs. Right? So we see an increase in diversity in both areas. But it's not just housing. We also need to think about the types of jobs that are being created. These are office, and who occupies them. These are office jobs. Right? These are headquarters office jobs. And what we see, for example, is of the 105 positions at the executive or senior managers and officials level, 6 of those 105 are Asian or Asian American. 3 are men, 3 are women. And there's 1 Hispanic man. The other 98 are white. 20 of them are women. So at that top level of Amazon's hierarchy, there are 78, of the 105, 78 are white European American men. And we know that that is an issue throughout the tech industry. And I think Lee's going to be talking a little bit more about that later on. And the only area that we really see any parity in Amazon's workforce is in the warehouse centers, in the distribution centers, both in terms of racial distribution, racial equity, and also race or gender parity. And the only category in which women outnumber men is in administrative support, unsurprisingly, and that's by a large margin. So essentially what we know about the Amazon headquarters jobs is that the higher up the hierarchy you go, the whiter and more male it becomes. Right? So we already live in a city that deals with these problems. And so we need to think about what this might mean, what this influx of 50,000 new jobs and these new employees might mean for the city. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pass it on, or I'm going to just give some bios for our speakers. First, we have Carl Redwood, Jr., who many of you know. Carl does not need an introduction for many of you, which is works out well because he didn't send me his bio. So I know Carl has had a lifetime of done a lifetime of organizing work. He worked in as a machinist, correct? No?
I was a steel worker for a minute.
Steelworker for a minute, several decades ago. He teaches at the School of Social Work at the University of Pittsburgh. He is a community organizer. He is a board member of the Hill District Consensus Group, and he has worked up until recently as an organizer at the United Steelworkers. He will be followed by Amanda Green Hawkins, who is a wife and mother who somehow manages to work full-time for an international labor union as the director of its Civil and Human Rights Department and its assistant general counsel. She believes that everyone deserves dignity and respect in the workplace. She served 2 terms as an elected council member of Allegheny County Council, representing 100,000 Pittsburgh residents.
And we miss you.
And she is an alumna of Duke University and Northeastern University School of Law. Lee Solomon Pugliano is a social entrepreneur from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She is the co-founder and CEO of Straightforward Consulting and the founder and director of Barrels to Beethoven. Most of her work is focused around entrepreneurship, youth development, and social justice. Following Lee, Jourdan Hicks will speak. Jourdan is a lifelong Pittsburgh resident. She was born and raised in the Hazelwood section of town, which is right next to Hazelwood Green, we should note, which is one of the prime locations slated for the Amazon HQ2 development, if it were to come here. She has received degrees from Penn State and Duquesne universities, where she studied communications, rhetoric, and educational studies. Currently, Jourdan works as a freelance media and education consultant. Laura Wiens is the director of Pittsburghers for Public Transit and has been a member of the PPT board since 2013. Laura has her roots in labor organizing with Unite HERE and draws from her experience recruiting and training leaders in the service industry to mobilize transit riders in the fight for equity, access, and transparency within our public agencies. She received her bachelor's in Asian Studies at Williams College and spent years abroad working in community radio in post-conflict regions such as Chiapas, Mexico, and Belgrade, Serbia. Laura believes in the collective power of people to transform their communities. Hopefully you believe in that too, which I assume you do since you're all here. And our last panelist today will be Mila Sanina, who serves as the executive director of PublicSource, a nonprofit media organization covering the Pittsburgh region. Previously, Mila worked at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, CNN International, and PBS. She has a master's degree from the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm really excited about this panel. I hope you are too. I think we have a great panel lined up, so I will pass it to Carl now, and we'll go from here. And following the panel, we'll have a question and answer discussion, so if you could just hold your questions until then, we'll get to them then. Thanks.
Thank you. Everyone should get a copy of the paper that Jason wrote. It's really good in terms of giving us a big overview of what we're about to witness here in Pittsburgh if Amazon comes this way. Whose city?
Our city.
Whose city?
Our city.
Whose city?
Our city.
It's very important that we put this whole question of Amazon into a larger perspective, but it's important we also understand the history that we've been through. Families are being displaced from Pittsburgh at an alarming pace, particularly black families. In 1980, there were 100,000 black people in Pittsburgh. By 2015, we were down to 75,000 black people living in Pittsburgh. We lost a quarter of the black population from 1980 to 2015. And the rate of push out of black families between 2010 and 2015 was even greater than the previous rate of push out. We're losing 3 black people every day from the city of Pittsburgh. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, is the destruction of affordable housing and the rising cost of rents in Pittsburgh. When people leave, black people leave Pittsburgh, and white people too, but particularly black people, they don't go back down south. Black people are going to Rankin, they're going to Clairton, they're going to Homestead, they're going to Wilkinsburg, and many of those municipalities surrounding Pittsburgh are now majority black that weren't majority black 15 or 20 years ago. But there's a push out of families from Pittsburgh, particularly African American families, and that's likely to accelerate for the reasons Jason outlines in his paper and talked about to us just now. As housing prices rise because of this new workforce that's anticipated with much higher incomes purchasing many new homes and building new homes, it will push many families further and further out, and not just to Homestead and places like that, but the region will really start to, the housing costs will start to go up, and people will have to move further and further out. So you have to live in Greene County in order to be able to afford a home instead of just in Allegheny County on the edges. But there's a battle already going on in Pittsburgh between the government that supports businesses like the Pittsburgh Penguins and Uber and Google and all these other companies that are coming into town, and the people who lived here for so long who can no longer afford to live in Pittsburgh or even in the Pittsburgh region. But there's a housing crisis. It began in my neighborhood, the Hill District, back in 1957 when 8,000 folks were displaced in order to build parking lots. And those parking lots are still there. They just displace folks for parking lots because parking is better business for them. But there's a war going on and we're losing the war already. And if Amazon comes here, it'll accelerate the battle, and it won't accelerate it necessarily in our favor. Specifically on this Amazon deal is very rare. It's like a public auction. There's a Greg Leroy from Good Jobs First says he only knows of 6 other public auctions like this Amazon auction where they put out a public RFP for cities to respond to. Normally, as Jason said, it's done through only backroom deals and there's no public auction and you don't know about it till the end, as Jackie had said as well. They put out a request for proposals to cities. They received 238 bids. Out of those 238 bids, we know they whittled it down to 20, and Pittsburgh is one of the 20 that's in the next phase. For these 20, like Pittsburgh, there's going to be a new request for proposals, and it's going to demand that everything be secret from here on. So it's already secret to us because we don't know what the city sent. We know what Amazon sent, but we don't know what the city sent. But this next phase is going to be mandated by Amazon that it be a secret phase for everyone to participate in. So we might get the information from before, but we won't get the information going forward. This mega deal doesn't only reduce, I'm sure, we don't know what the details are in the Pittsburgh thing, but we can guarantee that there'll be reduced taxes on Amazon, that they won't have to pay income tax and property taxes, or there'll be some deal that relates to that. But a lot of the deals around the country right now go further than just reducing the company's taxes. They even go into the personal income tax that the workers at Amazon will pay. And you end up paying, if you're working for Amazon, your taxes end up going right back to the boss at Amazon. Because the state is a part of the deal, the county's a part of the deal, the city's a part of the deal. And personal income taxes also will help build the wealth of the owners of Amazon. One thing we need to look at is they say there's going to be 50,000 jobs paying $100,000 or something. That's what they say. We need to check that because when it actually happens, that probably won't happen. That's what they say to entice us to give them the whole store. But we have to look at the cost of the subsidy that is being proposed versus the jobs and how long it will take to recoup the subsidy if we really going to try, we think we'll get it back in terms of support for Pittsburgh. A couple big issues I really want to talk about that are way bigger than Amazon. Amazon's the big thing here now, but this whole question of what's the role of government is really the question. And I had a handout, I didn't have enough for everyone. But on one hand, the government can be a business facilitator, and government sees their role as attracting businesses, doing whatever you can to get businesses in, and giving all kind of subsidies in order to do that. The thinking behind that is change happens through the private market, and that there's these benefits that will come to the area, and somehow those benefits will trickle down to us.